Welcome to your midweek Cybersecurity Executive Briefing, brought to you by Clock Tower Technology Services and the United Regional Chamber of Commerce. I'm Brian Sulo, your virtual CISO for the next 15 minutes. My company is Clock Tower Technology Services, and we provide IT, telecom, and information security services to businesses with 10 to 100 employees. But this isn't a sales pitch, so if you want to learn more about what we do and how we do it, we can talk later. Today is Wednesday, October 20th, and it's time for cybersecurity news and takeaways that you can use in your business today. I'll keep the InfoSec jargon to a minimum, but if there's anything you don't understand, please ask me to clarify, preferably at the end when we have time set aside for Q&A. Now let's get to the news. Browser extensions are little applications that users can add to their web browser to enable various functions. Browser extensions generally appear as a little icon near the top right corner of the browser window. Password managers have browser extensions that allow them to automatically fill in credentials when needed. Services like Evernote and Pocket have extensions that allow the user to quickly save a web page to their account to view later. Thousands of browser extensions exist from independent publishers that purport to perform all sorts of functions. Some of the most popular are ad blockers. The Hacker News and other sources recently reported on a browser extension that was marketed as an ad blocker. But in reality, it injected its own ads and affiliate links into whatever web page was being viewed. The takeaway from this story is that while these generally free extensions are generally benign, there are plenty of malicious browser extensions out there as well. Some that do more than just inject ads and affiliate links. There are a few big problems with browser extensions. They can be installed even by users running non-privileged accounts. They don't show up as installed applications on the computer, so standard software inventory practices don't detect them. And they can follow the user from computer to computer if the user has chosen to sync their browser settings. This means that a browser extension a user uses on their unmanaged home PC could show up on their office computer without your knowledge or even their intention. While it is possible to lock down and centrally manage browser settings, this isn't always easy in a small business environment. Another option is to implement application control software that prevents all but unauthorized applications, including browser extensions, from executing on your PCs. And speaking of applications that run on top of other applications, WordPress continues to be one of the most popular website platforms because of its ease of use and because of the massive ecosystem of available plugins that do the heavy lifting of website development. ThreatPost reports on a plugin called Brizzy Page Builder that, while not malicious, contains a vulnerability that can allow an attacker to take over your website. I've got a couple of takeaways here. One, web development and maintenance requires specialized skills and knowledge, including knowledge of security. It's best to leave this to the professionals. We don't maintain or host our own website because it's not a skill set we want to develop in-house. And two, if you can't do that, if you can't leave it to the professionals for whatever reason, you need to be aware of the plugins you're using and disable those you aren't using, and make sure to keep WordPress and all plugins up to date on a regular basis. The same applies to other platforms like Joomla. Last Tuesday was Patch Tuesday. On the second Tuesday of each month, Microsoft releases a month's worth of patches for their products. Other vendors such as Adobe have adopted this schedule as well. This month, Microsoft patched 71 vulnerabilities, including 4 zero-day flaws. And just as a reminder, a 0-day means that the threat actors were actively exploiting the flaw before it was patched. The takeaway is, if your IT services company is managing patches, you should be all set. Otherwise, go to your Windows settings and click on Update and Security to receive the latest updates. Now, VPNs have been all the rage for the last several years. You can hardly listen to a podcast or watch a YouTube video that isn't sponsored by a VPN app. Clearly, internet privacy is something that a lot of people want, and the bad guys know this. Cyberscoop brings us the scoop on a malicious VPN app uploaded to the Google Play Store by the Iranian government. The details of what it does are not that important to our discussion. The takeaway is that the only safe VPN is the one you control both ends of. You see, with any VPN provider, the data you send through the VPN is visible to the entity that operates the VPN. So unless you or your company are that entity, your data is visible to someone you don't know and have no reason to trust. On top of that, the advertising around VPN services is misleading. Almost all internet traffic today is encrypted from the time it leaves your device to the time it arrives at the destination. So the privacy benefits of a VPN are actually minimal. There are very good security reasons to use a VPN to connect to corporate resources, but this isn't going to be accomplished by some VPN provider you find in the Google Play Store. And there go my chances of this series ever being sponsored by a VPN provider. Now, once again, camera systems are in the cybersecurity news. First up, a report from ThreatPost calls attention to a tool that can infect DVRs. That's the box that does all the recording of the camera data with malware. And Security Week reports on similar vulnerabilities in camera systems from Exact Technologies. The takeaway from both of these articles is that your camera system is part of your technology infrastructure and needs to be maintained and patched on a regular basis by qualified security practitioners. Additionally, it must be segregated from the rest of your network. Krebs on Security always has great stuff, and this article is no different. It details how attackers were able to gain access to Coinbase accounts, even though these accounts had two-factor authentication enabled. They, quite logically, simply asked the victims for their 2FA code, and then made sure to log in very quickly. The takeaway: 2FA is very important for security against certain kinds of attacks, but it doesn't prevent all attacks, and phishing a 2FA protected account is still possible. This is why end-user security awareness is still so important. And speaking of phishing, attackers are now moving their spear phishing campaigns lower in the org chart. Research from Avanan shows that, quote, half of all phishing emails they analyzed in recent months impersonated non-executives, and 77% of them targeted employees on the same level. The reasoning here is that non-executive employees often have access to sensitive data as well. The takeaway is that you should make sure your company's security awareness training is keeping up with these latest threat advances. A few years back, I coined a saying: today's paranoia is tomorrow's best practice. We in the InfoSec world have a reputation for being overly cautious and responding to threats that are, for the moment, only theoretical in nature. This week we have a couple of stories that illustrate this point. 4 stories, actually. For the first example, do you use a soft phone? A soft phone is an app that runs on your smartphone or your PC that acts as an extension of your business telephone system, allowing you to receive and place calls through that system. Vulnerabilities were recently discovered in 2 brands of soft phone app, Linphone and MicroSip, that allow a remote attacker to extract data from the app simply by making a specially crafted phone call. Popular 3D printers by MakerBot were temporarily vulnerable to being accessed remotely, including their onboard cameras, because of a breach in the Thingiverse 3D model repository. Yep, your 3D printer might be spying on you. From bleepingcomputer.com, researchers have proven it's possible to train a special-purpose deep learning algorithm that can guess four-digit card pins 41% of the time, even if the victim is covering the pad with their hands. At this point, it's a research project and it requires a lot of knowledge about the particular pin pad and a lot of training, but a sufficiently motivated developer could probably make this a lot easier to implement. And finally, hot off the presses from darkreading.com, cybercriminals made off with $35 million from a company in the UAE using a combination of email phishing and deepfake audio to convince a branch manager to transfer funds to a fraudulent account. And this isn't the first time this technique has been used. From the article, quote, "Deepfake audio and synthesized voices will likely become part of cybercriminals' techniques in the future. A variety of open source tools are available to allow anyone to create deepfakes, both video and audio," says Ite Mayor, Senior Director, Security Strategy at Network Security from Cato Networks. The takeaway from all four of these stories, the soft phones, the 3D printers, the pin-guessing AI, and the deepfake audio, is this. It's not too many steps from where each of these vulnerabilities is now to a very serious threat in the near future. What seems like a far-fetched plot far-fetched plot point in a spy thriller right now might just become something we need to defend against in a year or so. That's why I say that today's paranoia is tomorrow's best practice. In cybersecurity, we're always thinking about what's next. What would it take for the bad guys to turn this seemingly benign quirk into a real threat? Slightly more powerful smartphones, a little better artificial intelligence, the discovery of some other vulnerability that suddenly makes this one viable? To quote cybersecurity expert Bruce Schneier, attacks only get better. That means we have to anticipate how they're going to get better and block them before they can. In an interview with Info Security magazine, Joseph Carson, chief security scientist at Thycotic Centrify, talks about ways to mitigate the risks of human error. When asked what he believes is driving poor security behavior, Carson replies, quote, "Above all else, it is the balance between productivity and security. So when employees are faced with tough choices between getting the job done or delays, they will take the easy path, sacrificing security to get the job done." End quote. I've made the point a couple of times in LinkedIn posts over the last year, but it bears repeating. Overwork increases risk as well as stress. When your people are too busy to stop and think about whether what they're doing is secure, or they're too busy to care, they're going to make mistakes, and your business is going to pay the price. The Wall Street Journal has been hammering on Facebook, TikTok, and other social media giants over the last month or so, and with good reason. It's no secret that social media is addictive, and in an article from this past Sunday, Joanna Stern points out how changing some default settings in Facebook, Instagram, and other apps can reduce their addictive nature. How many of your employees engage with social media on work computers or on their personal smartphones during work time? As with any addiction, this can affect productivity. But unlike most other addictions, social media can be a direct means for threat actors to attack your network. Have you talked to your employees about social media? What they don't know can hurt you. Is it time to block social media sites from your corporate network? That's something each business needs to decide individually, but a hard look might reveal that the risks of social media outweigh the rewards. And that's your cybersecurity executive briefing for this week. Before we get into the Q&A section, I just want to mention that the best place to connect with me is on LinkedIn. Remember that the stories presented are selected to be relevant to our audience based on the technologies you've said you're using. If you are using other technologies in your organization and would like these covered, please let me know. Until next time, stay safe, stay in touch. Together, we're secure. Thank you.